Yes, hello, welcome to the 31st Filmfest Dresden, to the panel called Gender Talks. My name is Lily Hartwig. I'm quite happy to see quite a few faces here to discuss this very current and old, long-lasting topic of gender and how it's represented in film, what we can change, how filmmakers and artists approach this subject. So anybody, this panel will be recorded, so it's part of initiative Be Short Now. You can see it here. The color scheme was set before we picked the gender topic, so don't think it's the pink and blue has a particular meaning. It's been there before. The initiative Be Short Now is a series of industry events that are focusing on short films and the festival industry and about sharing knowledge and making it visible. So there is a website called beshortnow.com where you can see all the panels that have taken place. There are quite a few European festivals that take place, that take part in this initiative. Next to Dresden, it's the Guillaume Festival in Spain, Torino in Italy, and Counters and Glasgow in the UK, and Vienna Shorts in Austria. And we were also very happy to have one of the initiatives, Enrico Vannucci, here with us today. Welcome as well. So, but I have three very important people sitting around me. Those are our filmmakers today, because this topic of gender came up as an idea of the selection committee this year. I mean, it's not a subject that has it has always been part of filmmaking and short films, but it's become more and more that filmmakers from all around the world have different, make works about this subject, dealing with different aspects of gender, equality, diversity, sexuality. And the idea was to invite filmmakers and to have a kind of deal with different artistic approaches to the subject and how to deal with representation, stereotypes, how to be critical. So to my left, it's Erica Scoggins from the United States. Her film, The Boogie Woman, is screening in the international competition here. This is Simone Paetau, who has a film in the special program Cuba. It's a few years older, but it's called Mila Chaos. And he made it while he was a student at the university in Cologne and doing an exchange program on Cuba. And to my right, it's Steve Bache. He is actually from around Dresden. He was born here. His film, The Captain is screening in the national competition. So welcome, you guys. So just for the kind of planning of this afternoon, we will start with presenting the works of all of the panelists here, and we're going to see short extracts of their works, and we're going to talk a bit about it. Then we'll open the discussion and talk a bit in a group about certain topics, recurring themes, challenges that you face as a filmmaker. And then we'd also like to invite all of you to share your ideas, your criticism, your experiences when it comes to representing gender in film. Yeah. So. Yes, I would start maybe, one more kind of organizational. We would also like to welcome the gender diversity jury, because the Filmfest Dresden has an award, I think, since last year for a film which represents gender diversity. The jury of Susanne Seifert, who represents the Gender Competency Center in Dresden, Enrico Damme, who is working with the LAG Jung- und Männerarbeit. LAG is very difficult to translate from German. It's a work group dealing with the boys and men themes. And Vera Ohlendorf from the Queer Network of Saxony. And they make a short list of films. You can, and also Steve's film is part of it. It will be screened tonight at 8 o'clock here at the Schauburg. So if somebody wants to see more current examples of gender themes in film, feel free to visit the Schauburg later on. So yeah, I would just say let's start with Erica, with your film. So first of all, welcome to Dresden. You just arrived this morning.
Yeah. Hello. Yes, I just arrived this morning. My body is very confused, but I'm excited to be here.
So maybe we're gonna see a short scene of your film, but maybe you can give a bit of background, what to expect and what your film's about.
Yeah. So I actually meant to ask you this earlier. Is there a boogeyman myth that translates to German? Like a kind of scary monster that was meant to scare children into behaving as kids?
Well, this is the country of the Brothers Grimm. There are a lot of scary things living in the forests.
Well, so what I kind of realized is that, I grew up hearing about the boogeyman, and it was this sort of source of control. And I started thinking about what the boogie woman would be. And so my concept kind of started from there, and I started thinking about womanhood and becoming a woman and the kind of issues you deal with when you reach that fateful day when you get your first period. And so my film, The Boogie Woman, is a coming-of-age kind of thriller. It definitely uses the horror genre, but it definitely kind of asks, why are we horrified by this natural biological process that basically says you're a healthy young girl? And so it's definitely uses a lot of tropes to kind of point a finger at that.
So, and the majority of the film takes place, or the beginning, at a skating ring. Yeah, and so we're gonna see a short scene that takes place, kind of in the, about a third way into the film. So, yeah. So yes, the boogie woman and the girls as well. I think one of the interesting things we've already seen it is the topic of blood, which is very important as well. And you see the little girl with the nosebleed that fell down, and the reaction everybody else has. Can you tell us a little bit about why this was so important to you?
Yeah, I think what's kind of interesting to me is that we have so much violence in film. We're so used to seeing blood outside the body. But earlier in The Boogie Woman, we actually see her menstrual blood. And so I was kind of interested in the mix between those two things, blood that comes from violence or violence to the body, and then blood that comes from a natural source, so to speak. And I think for Sam, for the main character, kind of, she has this sort of traumatic experience where has this experience that she wants to happen to her, but also doesn't want to happen. It's like you want to be normal like your friends, and you don't want to be the last one to start your period, but it's also a little bit scary. And I think that blood kind of carries this magic throughout the film, where she's coming to know herself and know her vulnerabilities and her powers more. And so I definitely think of blood as kind of magic in the film.
And it's also, I mean, the magic, it's a bit horror elements. I mean, you could notice the tension that was coming up, and it's often, quite often puberty, coming of age is connected to body horror as well, to horror elements. But so this choice not to kind of put it on the ground to ground the film, but to use this kind of elements, it fits quite well with the theme. But I think there is also this more of this horror of the experience of being a woman that's behind it.
Yeah, I definitely, most of my films deal with kind of conceptual things that I then try to put into a narrative, but then kind of remove from reality to support this mythology that I'm trying to create. And I think what we feel versus what other people see us, how other people see us when we're feeling those things, is so different. And you can pass someone in the street and have no idea what's going on inside them. And film for me is kind of a way to augment the inside and use everything from atmosphere to staging to music and sound to really put us in that tension, like you said. And I think that's where I kind of fell into the horror genre, is there is so much kind of kind of not knowing what's happening to you, and knowing that you're up against something new, and that thing in here is the boogie woman, which is, she's real and she's a metaphor. So yeah, I think it just naturally kind of led to horror in that sense.
And the boogie woman, when we kind of get to see her and get to meet her, don't want to spoil the film, but yeah, I have to mention it, is in some ways reminded me also of the kind of femme fatale, a very sexualized woman, and this character is in the film history is so loaded with so much baggage, but you compare her in a way to the boogeyman, to a myth of horror as well. So did you have any this choice to create her this way, to sexualize her?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when you think about why are women afraid of men, and it's that we can be killed by them easily, and it happens all the time. And when you think about why men maybe are afraid of women, it's not quite the same thing. Yes, women murder men sometimes, but it doesn't translate in the same way. And so I started thinking, why would men or anyone be afraid of a woman? And often it's a independent, sexual woman who's doing what she wants despite the rules that have been set before her. And that's kind of the, why the boogie woman can't be translated from the boogeyman, because it's not the same culturally.
Okay, well, thank you very much. First of all, I would kind of move on to Steve now and his film called The Captain. Yeah, can you tell us a bit of the background of the story? Because the film is dealing with masculinity and it's also dedicated to your father, I've read.
Yeah, because it's a story about a father, a lifeguard who had an accident and who's can't doing his job anymore. And in the film, he wants last time to be the man he thinks he needs to be for his son, and he wants to be the hero he thinks he needs to be for his son, and he's trying to cope with his injury. And it's somehow autobiographically, because when I was in the age of the child, which you will see in a few minutes, I was in the same situation because my father had a heart attack and he couldn't do his job anymore. And for him, it was really hard to cope with this situation, to not be the man he wants to be. And I think it was really hard for him to let go of this picture of a man he has in his mind. And so what you will see in the scene is right after he first went into the water, the father, and he realized, okay, his injury is really hard and he can't swim like he wanted to swim, and he was going out of the water, and the scene, what you will be seeing now, it's playing after this situation.
Yeah, as we can see, it's a very male-dominated group they're hanging around with, and you see a lot of rituals already coming up: arm wrestling, drinking beer, and this cult of how masculinity should be developed. And I was wondering, because sometimes, of course, I can't take away who I am and what my approach is, but sometimes it's this: we've had so many films about men, and why do we need more? Like, shall we should we open this up? So have you, and you talked about there been some discussion also in your school. This is part of your studies at the film school in Ludwigsburg. So yeah, how did people react when you said, this is my theme, this is what I want to talk about?
It's a long story actually, because what I tried with this film is like to give a message to the parents. I don't know who has children here, and to tell them, okay, you don't need to protect your children from the truth or from injuries or from the reality that you as a parent, you can't be always all the time the heroes of your children in this time or this picture you think you have in mind. And in my film, this kid, he has like really fast recognizes that his father can't go this way he wants to go, and I think he wants to show him, okay, I'm on your side, you can trust me, you can say to me what's wrong with you. And it's like this situation when he grabs his beer and he drinks from it just to show him, okay, I'm in your world and I can cope with your world, but just show me that you heard. And I think that was a big topic for me in this kind of manhood and these topics about man. It's like to show that we are some kind prisoner of these old patterns which we inherit from our parents, and it's not the easy way that we can get lost of it. And I think that was my I don't know the English word, Beitrag. Contribution. Yeah, okay. It was my contribution to this whole discussion about sexism and gender diversity and all this stuff, because I think we need to remember that we grow up with like 15 years of experience of like these old patterns which our parents are living and showing us, and we want to be like our parents. And I think it's hard for us to experience which sides are wrong and which old patterns are wrong in our head. And I think it needs some time to break these up and to work over.
And it's within this group of men. I mean, it's a very kind of realistic style. You don't have any genre elements really coming in. It's a very taking place in the now. And but you see a lot of these other men. It's also this. It's always this challenging, always forcing themselves to be strong. And I think it's quite moving in the end as well, that the son hugs his father. It kind of got me when I watched it, because it was kind of this suddenly not a projection of how to behave, but a real physical contact, a chance of like not arm wrestling, but helping one another. And of course, I'm a woman. I'm not sure, but is that something so you've also experienced as a boy, or also your fellow students or your team could relate to this narration?
Yeah, I think there are not that much hugs between men or sons and fathers, even not in my childhood when I remember right. But I think it's the majority somehow. We have this discussion in our school, especially too, with this whole diversity and how we can take or let women take part in the whole progress. And I think there are so much directions where people are living in the old ways, and we have like this discussion really in a little closed envelope. Or, I don't know if I say it right, but I think there are so many people who are really like in this kind of, okay, I'm a man, she's a woman, and I'm doing this stuff and I'm doing this stuff. And I think like these lifeguards, they're living this whole day on the lake, and they're doing like their man-like stuff they are doing the whole day, and I think it will take some time on. And even the woman there, I met some women they're coping with it, and they even bring these thoughts to their childs, to their kids, and it's like for them it's too. What you don't go arm wrestling with your father, just do it, and let's drink some beer, and it's like I think we can't forget, like there are a lot of people who don't even think about like this diversity stuff. And yeah, for me it was like really interesting to go to let this father be in a society which are where diversity is not a big topic for them in this moment. Yeah, I think for him it's then even harder not to be a hero.
Yeah, well, once we've reached the topic of diversity, I'm going to look over to my left, Simone, because your film, I mean, we're going to see a bit of a trailer now of your first feature film, which was screened in cinemas, or that was released last autumn, I think, last autumn. And maybe you can give us a bit of an introduction to this work, because it's going to be a bit more abstract as a trailer, because it's all the fragments.
Yeah, so hello. Okay. The film is a road movie through the Amazon forest. I directed together with a queer female Brazilian director. And it's a story of Ana. Ana is a girl from Sao Paulo, from the city, who comes to terms with the death of her sibling, who was a non-binary queer activist and died in a performance putting a mice cone up their ass to protest against the monocultures in the Amazon forest, and dies after this performance. So she travels through the Amazon and comes in terms with medicinal plants, jaguars, and death. So we see a short trailer now. No?
Yeah. So just to be clear, it's not the corn that kills him, the act, but how the people react to this, or the farmers, or how was it?
Sebastian hears the farmers, and while doing this performance, runs away and falls down and dies. Yeah.
So in a way, it's kind of this long-standing trope in a way of the queer characters having to die in the end, and society is catching up. So it's how by making this film, I mean, it's my stereotype in a way in Brazil. You shot in Brazil in the Amazon. How was the reaction when you showed up there? How was that shooting experience? And this colorful. I mean, all these colorful characters that you brought along.
I mean, Thais was born in the U.S., was the daughter of illegal immigrants from Brazil. My mother's Colombian. And so we always had this, we met in Cuba in the film school, which Rita Schwarz initiated while I'm here. And this is where we met, and we always said we wanted to do a film about borders. So what do borders mean, not only geographically, but the borders who cross our bodies, because borders define who we are, gender-wise, but as well. And the borders in the Amazon are very abstract, because Colombia and Brazil share a very similar history in regards to colonization. So we never got film funding for the films I want to do here, because it's very hard as a queer person in Germany to get funding to do films here, and Thais the same. So we said, let's meet our Cuban friends in Sao Paulo and let's initiate this voyage. And so we with 5 people in 3 months with no money, we traveled. And I think it was a big challenge, and I think I learned a lot, because afterwards we were thinking, okay, what does a queer film mean? Like, perhaps we need to create as well other ways of creating to be able to find out what are queer aesthetics. So not only having a queer character from the LGBTIQ spectrum as a main character, but like how do we see the world? We want to talk about environmental questions. We want to talk about indigenous ancestry. There are so many questions beyond our own identity, which I need to constantly talk about. So yeah, it's a film, it's a ritual, it's a performance. So I hope you can see it.
And it's also, I mean, the question of borders, I mean, it's to leave all these gender stereotypes behind is also leaving these borders and trying to approach the world with a far more open mind, as you said, and then suddenly all these other topics are coming up. So is there, in your experiences dealing with queer cinema and the representation, what are the stereotypes you've encountered and how are you trying to reverse them or be critical of them? Because for a lot of times they were kind of queer characters, even might it be a drag queen or something, has been used just solely for comedy, for example, or as a background characters.
Yeah, how you say the characters are one thing, but I think as well the narratives. Like the narratives are very heteronormative, like are very linear from when we come to one place and go to the other, like this whole arc. And so queerness for us is as well a way of how can we deconstruct narratives and find new narratives. I think queer film is not only to have like a character from the LGBTIQ spectrum, but as well like how do we see the world and how do we narrate. And I think we really only if we do this translation to a heteronormative narrative, like giving an example, most of queer representations are of 17-year-old mostly white gay men, and they're coming out, and so they came out and then they're realized, that's the common narrative. But there's so many much more questions, and I think there's so much to talk about. So aesthetically, narrative-wise, and content-wise in the representation. But I think representation is only one part of queer cinema. I think we need to go beyond as well. This is where, like, what can be queer aesthetic? We really need to break these heteronormative patterns. And why do we need to do a film? This film is an accident because we didn't got funding, and we did it because we constantly rethought of what are we. We didn't just wanted to go in the Amazon and like, oh, now the script is ready, it can't be changed. So with 20 people, we just like go after our own projections. Queerness for me is a rethinking of rebreaking of my imagination and of my preconceived ideas about things, So it's a constant process of deconstructing ourselves, and this we wanted to reintegrate, reproduce into the narrative and into the aesthetics. So we are on a big research of what can this be, and the journey will continue.
I was also thinking, like, now just focusing on your films as well, but also considering Erica for The Boogie Woman, you're using genre elements. Like, both of your films are using kind of stylistic devices that are more over the top. And I was wondering, in a way, that the non cultural leading demographic, everybody who's kind of outside that group, or maybe also you want to say something about it as well, but that you have to use more drastic stylistic means to tell your story or to wake people up, or is that also that's part of the story to not tell it completely realistically in a way?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the visceral nature of horror. People watch horror films to be kind of scared, and I try to avoid jump scares, but sometimes that just feeling of having a really strong emotion that you can't have in everyday life often. I wanted to connect that with her internal experience. So the genre really plays with basically using cinema to create a visceral experience that matches that of the character. And I feel like, again, like going to, more of a realistic straight drama where we're seeing, what happens and how she reacts. We're not quite in it with her as much in the way that I want. So yeah, I think it's really about that visceral body response.
And also for you, I mean, this stylization, sometimes people kind of is expected as well in a way for queer cinema, that it needs to be more colorful, that it needs to be more loud. But I sometimes think it's also to make it more visible, so to be represented or to be seen. I think that's also something that might be behind it.
I need to think about it, what you just said. I think, yes, but the wildness is part of queerness, I think we're, we don't need to be normal, There's this normalization all the time happening, that I mean, queer sexuality is very different, we need to learn to accept difference and being different, So this is why you said before, diversity is not everybody is dealing with it. I'm a bit critical. I think this is it's a bit problematic, because what you're saying, I think everybody's using this word diversity, but what does it actually mean, I think it should be like a political structure, or to rethink like who's seen and who's not seen. So for queer people, we are constantly being othered. We are constantly, and other minorities too, so of being invisibilized. So I think the diversity should be a strategy, political strategy, to visibilize the invisibilities or invisible identities. So it's a reality we are facing every day.
You don't have to, but if you have...
I agree. It's totally... I can't say more.
But also, I mean, there's this question of being seen. We talked a bit about it before, because one of the things I find very interesting at the moment, I mean, might it be Me Too and all the other debates that are going on, usually every time a kind of minority group, even it might be such a big group as women, there is always a backlash. There is always a reaction. There will always be people that complain and say, why are we, this is not important, we have to talk to these other... How has there been the reaction to your works, and have you experienced something like this as well with your film?
Not directly. I need to think about it. If you have answered it.
You have.
I think one of the biggest problems that I see right now, especially in the States, is that the loudest, most projected voices are the most divisive. And so you have the hardcore feminists who, sometimes do take on a kind of anti-male connotation. And then you have, outright misogynists on the other side. And those are sometimes the loudest voices, or at least the ones that get the most attention. For me, I'm interested in dealing with these kinds of subjects with nuance, because I think if we say, you have to think about this way, or you have to, live your life this way, then the first thing somebody's going to say is, no, I don't. I'm not going to do that, and I'm not going to listen to you because you don't know me and you don't want to know me. And so if we approach each other with, here is just an experience that most women have, and here is a, kind of over-the-top representation of it that's also hopefully entertaining. I hope you like it. Then there can be a conversation started. And I think, we spoke a little bit before this, that something I always want to tackle or bring up when I'm kind of put into this, category of a feminist filmmaker is that, okay, yeah, I guess I am, but it's just because I'm a woman making films about topics that I, deal with, and that's what men have done since the beginning of film. And the more we push for diversity and new voices and underrepresented voices, that shouldn't take away at all from, valuable male voices that are already there. And I think that's evident in your film having success. And, so I think, there has been a pendulum swung this way for a really long time, and now we're hoping that it's swinging back, but it doesn't need to swing completely the other way. It needs to stop in the middle. And that's what equality is. So, yeah. And I think in response to my film, my mom is the one who had the most problem with it to begin with, until we got on set, and she was like, "This is great. All these guys are learning what it means to be a woman," as our prop girl is running by with fresh tampons, and so she got on board with it. But at first she was like, "I don't understand, why are you ever going to make movies that everybody wants to see?" And I was like, probably not. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
I can relate somehow to this topic because it's like we had these, I don't know if anybody knows that on the Berlinale last year, all the film schools just underlined a form or a contract somehow that they want to support more female filmmakers, to bring them into industry, and they started to have more seminars for women or for female students at our film academy, and it was the first time all of the male students, me too, we started to talk about it and to go back, because it was happening something like what you said, the pendulum swings back, and we were like, okay, we need these seminars too, because it was like seminars about presenting yourself and being good in talking about money and all this stuff, and we never had something like that, and it was like a supporting for the female directors or female filmmakers on our school, and we realized, okay, now they make a difference between male and female students, which was not there before, and it was a bit crazy. I think it's my handy, which brings up and that's somehow I'm happy to be here, because it's a big topic right now, and it's in our school and somehow in my life right now, because we are talking a lot about this. I think we are this generation which needs to try to come over all this stuff and all these differences between woman and man, which are in the more older generations, I think. When I'm thinking about my childhood, I grew up with more female friends than male friends, and I came up to this film academy, and I was like, okay, we are all the same, we are working together, and now I'm in a situation where they bring a difference between me and my female colleagues, and I was just wondering what's happening right now. I can't blame anyone from the male students for the situation for female filmmakers in the industry, because I'm not in the industry right now. I can't change it, and it feels somehow strange in this situation. And yeah, it was we had this talk with our director and all this stuff. It's like to come to a point, I wanted to say that I think we need to work together in our generation and to work on it and to come over it.
Can I say something? I'm very critical of what you're saying, because I mean, patriarchy consists in that, like, if you're a male person, you have a lot of privileges female presenting people don't have. So I find it interesting that when you create a space to empower women to say, then again the men want to be in there. Sometimes you need to just, as a man, understand, like, step out and give others space and the spotlight. Why this always going over and wanting to take up that space, I really don't get it. I'm a hardcore feminist, so I think we need to abolish patriarchy. And I feel sometimes where does the threat come? Sometimes if minorities get space and be more visible, suddenly it becomes that if you're a feminist, you're anti-man. Or if like there's a straight queer representation, oh, then it's already too much because it's then anti-hetero, being anti-hetero, you know? And I see diversity as a beautiful garden where you look into the garden and there are a lot of plants coming up and they are popping up, you know, in their plurality. And this is what we should work for. And I agree with you that sometimes identity politics are limiting, you know. I don't want to talk only about queerness, you know, and my film is a film, you know, why, you know, and it's labeled as a queer film. A male filmmaker who does a film with a male protagonist, the people will not say, oh, this is a male-centric film, you know. A man is always universal, why minoritarian subjects or female filmmakers are always the experts on specific subject matter, you know. And yeah, so I think, yes, we need to abolish the differences, but it's a long way to go, you know.
I mean, it's a subject that's coming up in a lot of ways, also inclusion, about dealing with life with disabilities and stuff. And I was wondering, it's coming out, it came up already, this kind of affirmative action or positive discrimination is the German word for it. And also in the film industry, I mean, there are queer film festivals, there are female film festivals. How do you see those events to deal with it? Because is it, on the one hand, you can argue it's a very positive thing to give a platform. I mean, you just talked about your film was screened in a female-only filmmakers evening in Atlanta a few days ago. So, okay, it's positive. We have the chance to present the work, but on the other hand, isn't it limiting itself and marginalizing? Again, how do you see this? Like, shall we just say every film festival is the same, or is it important to have this community-based interest festivals?
I think I can see positives to both. If people feel like they haven't had a safe space to show their work and now they do, I think that's important. For me, I prefer festivals that show all kinds of work. Just because I don't think that we should, and this may or may not be happening, but I think one thing that is a potential danger with pushing films by certain people is there is a feeling that maybe the films are not being judged solely on how good they are or their content, but because they are, filling spots that our culture and the way that things are moving right now are pushing us. I feel like there are a lot of organizations who feel like they have to be pushing diversity, because if you're not pushing diversity, you're regressive. And I think we run the risk of it feeling forced in some ways. And again, then, I'm always someone who's thinking about multiple sides, and I go back to this idea, well, we should have those festivals, though, because everyone should be able to submit their work and feel like, they have a safe place to show it. So I'm kind of, both sides. I definitely feel a bit limited in the sense that, one of the questions that was asked at that screening was, which female filmmakers have inspired you or have most inspired you? And I had to rack my brain, because there are not as many female filmmakers with, long-standing careers, and actually the most influential filmmakers to me are male filmmakers. And I felt like I had to ask this question or answer this question of, like, I'm a female filmmaker, so I must be influenced by other female filmmakers, but that just wasn't the case for me. And so even in that moment, I was sitting there and I didn't say that. I came up with some female filmmaker that I liked 2 of her films, and I just said that because
I think queer festivals historically exist because of their invisibility. So for me, it's not a question or they need to exist, because as long as society is still that exclusive, racist, heteronormative, and sexist, these places need to exist. But I think the idea is that they exist to some that they disappear, that we don't need any more queer festivals, because it is the case that there are like half of the films should be female, that there in a selection there are queer films, you know, like in the film festival in Cartagena, it was like an amazing film festival in Colombia where we premiered our film, and in the selection committee, of course, where like it was run by the creative director was female. It was a very diverse selection committee, and there were a lot of queer programmers, but it was just the biggest Colombian film festival, and of course this was beautiful, and now they chop them off with the new government. So we all, but yeah, this is where we need to go, and I think we need these festivals, of course, because if they exist out of necessity, not because they want to limit people.
I agree in this direction, because like we, especially as filmmakers, especially for short films, we have the possibility to show like this minorities and this, how you say, invisible minorities beforehand, and I think this festivals, it's like a really good possibility to show them and to bring it more near to the society.
Yeah, so if there, by the way, if there are any questions from the audience, just raise your hand. So as we've kind of also reached this point of like, well, does anybody have any opinions towards having like a quota to say? I mean, the Berlinale was quite proud, for example, this year to say, oh, we have so many female filmmakers, and for a lot of us, it's like, well, shouldn't it be like almost 50-50 in a way, this kind of way? And how do you say, or shall you have a kind of film funding system or film festivals that sets a quota in this kind of affirmative action? Does any one of you have any opinions about introducing it?
I mean, we talked a lot about it. We had like this panel discussion too in the Film Academy, and we don't came to a conclusion, but in my opinion, we need a quote, but not a strict quote, you know, not to say, okay, from now on we need 50-50, because it's like I read one article about how many filmmakers are going up from film school, and it's like we have 40% female directors and 60% male directors, and I think we need to put this quote on the alumni somehow, or how many people are really working on in this industry. And I think, that was we came up to this point.
I think speaking to that point, and Simone, what you said earlier about the Colombian Film Festival that just had a diverse selection committee, I think, I mean, in the States, we can see how quotas are really bad with cops. They are supposed to arrest a certain amount of people or give a certain amount of tickets. So what do? They pull people over for no reason. That's not good. I think that with a quota system, that you get to the point where you may again be, choosing certain films that could be potentially of less quality than another. And I think that having a more of an equally weighted selection committee should kind of deal with that a little bit more than say you have 10 men on a jury and you're supposed to let in 50% women. It's I don't know. I just feel like, why not have 5 women and 5 men, or non-binary people, or whatever, and just start from the root of it all. That's kind of seems like the right move to me, but I don't work at a festival, so
that's
I don't know.
the direction that not the films are like, we need to make 50-50 films, but Also, the juries need to be 50-50 or 40-60 or something like that. I don't know.
I'm completely pro quota. Like, of course, we need a 50-50. I think it is a process of, like, this idea of quality. I mean, art is so fucking subjective, you know, like, it's as well the references system. Like, who can, for example, there's a long trajectory of, like, queer films, and I think people need to be as well expert on knowing, because our lives are different. So how's somebody going to judge the quality of something if they don't know the world? Or, you know, and a lot of minoritarian group of black people, indigenous people. So yes, we need definitely quotas, because if there's no other way, that people will give up their power, you know.
It's in Germany. It's also a big discussion about the film funding system. You said you didn't get any funding as well for your film.
I never got funding in Germany, and now, for example, ZDF and ID, they need to sign a diversity agreement. They have like a group of like 6 people there. There's not one queer person in it, and people of queer media society came there. They don't know what they are doing, you know, like. If you work for a TV station and you want to have a queer subject, it's mostly impossible, you know. And so the good thing about pro quota film is that they have raised all these numbers, you know. The problem with queer subjects is we don't have these numbers yet. But I'm very, very sure like that there's a high, it's a very strong misrepresentation or non-representation. In film in Germany when it comes to queer topics. Yeah.
It's also, I think, all of your works. I mean, to focus your film or to tell stories about the subject. There is the possibility that in the audience it can change something. It leads us back to representation. If a story is not represented or somebody you can identify with as an audience member, it will be more difficult. So I was just wondering, so far with the your films, one of the things I've noticed, and it came up with your film, is how the parents are dealing with. And I just wanted to go into leave the business a bit and go back to the characters and the stories and possibilities, how we can change something. Because in your film, Erica, it's also the mother is missing. We briefly heard it there. And the film you shot on Cuba, it's also the boy who's a drag queen who wants to be accepted by his mother in a way, and you tell the story. So how important is it for you to create new messages and for them to finding an audience? And do you have any reactions you can tell us about?
I have a beautiful example. I do theater as well, and so I had this we have this one moment where the performers came off stage and were asking every people in the audience, "Are you a man or are you a woman?" Now, excuse me, are you a man or are you a woman? You know, and then excuse me, I really have a private question. I really would like to know, are you a man or are you a woman? And this moment, like a 65-year-old straight man started like crying and didn't stop crying and said, I was never asked this question in my life and I don't know what to answer. And I think in this moment it is something super beautiful happen, because I think these questions belong to each of us because like the question of gender is not something only which belongs to people, queer people, you know. So it's a question which belongs to everybody, to roles in society, to gender roles. And so, yeah, I think if art can create this crack that you get a new glasses on and you start seeing the world through a different lens, I mean, that's beautiful.
There's not one way to be a woman and not one way to be a man and not just one stereotype.
Yeah. I think the lack of the mother in The Boogie Woman is kind of more, again, symbolic. It's all symbolic. About like what happens if you don't have someone showing you the way, into womanhood, or you don't agree or resonate with the way that you've been shown womanhood by your culture, your society, or even the friends around you. And so the idea is that she's, then finds her mother, which is her identity as a woman. I think I can't remember the second part of your question, so I'm going to stop there.
Or if you had any reactions so far, or people who've seen your work.
A high school boy in France told me it was very disturbing. And then a girl actually stopped me and was just said, thank you for showing this on screen, specifically the girls' period. And there have been kind of mixed things like that, and lots of interesting reactions to the final scene from, the kind of the male gaze and the female gaze, and the differences have been very entertaining. So I think it's a film that people have a lot of questions about, and that makes me happy. If I have the answers, sometimes I don't.
I don't had that much reactions till now because we're really fresh on the screening market.
Have you considered showing this film? I mean, it's quite difficult subject, but have you considered screening it for children, for example, for school children? In some ways, maybe 12-year-olds, 14-year-olds.
Yeah, we thought about it. We applied it for some festivals for children, but actually, I think when you watch the whole film, the message is more for the parents, more for the older audience. I think that children maybe understand what's going on and don't see the big problem inside the film. Maybe it's entertaining and all this stuff, but I think they don't they see it and think, yeah, it's like normal. And I think it's more a thing for parents to see and to feel and to understand that kids don't judge you as a parent in this way you think they will judge you.
The children are still very open in their mind, and at some point society comes in. So are there any contributions, opinions, statements, experiences you want to share? Because I think telling our stories to each other and listening to other experiences are important, yeah.
Do you think it's more easy for young male filmmakers than for young female filmmakers to get into industry?
I will repeat the question just for the microphone, I'm not sure. If it's easier for male filmmakers than female filmmakers to break into the industry. And I can, just from my opinion, say definitely yes. Just look at if you would watch in Germany how many people graduate film school, it's actually, that is still quite okay. If you watch who gets funding for your first film, watch who gets funding for the second film. And you see a steep decline in female filmmakers or any non-male filmmakers.
But why?
Because
patriarchy.
I agree.
It's the same in the States. It's I don't know. There is no other answer because it's dumb. Yeah, it's dumb. I don't have anything else to say, actually.
I think there is also sometimes the big stereotype of the women's film, as has been mentioned. So it's a female filmmaker. A male filmmaker will never be, except in a context like this, be called a male filmmaker. He will just be a filmmaker. And women are female filmmakers, so the films women produce, if it has female subject or our experience, our life, it is a female film. And that immediately cuts the audience in half because everybody believes that that's the stereotype in the industry and for the funding, for distribution, believes that no man would ever want to watch a female film. Why would you care? So on the other hand, all women are expected to identify with male characters or be used to it. So look at children films as well, or any big narrations that we have. It's male protagonists, so females are used to identifying with the male perspective, while there is still a lot of borders to take that in people's heads of accepting female stories.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I totally agree with this point, because it's like there's still this problem that women are seen as these birth machines somehow. And I've heard of older people who had a young company or something like that, and they're thinking about, okay, when a woman comes to an application or something, we don't think we will take her because maybe she will get a baby in the next few years because she's like in her 30s or something, and then we would need to pay her. No, maybe let's take a man or something like that. And I think that's a big problem. I think that's one of the main problems why female filmmakers don't come after a first or a second film really in the industry, because it's like this patriarchy. It's like the old man or even old woman. I think there are a lot of women in the industry who think, let's stay with a man or something. And I think for long run it's hard for women. But for the first film and even a second film, there's a lot of funding, a lot of young supporting. But for later it's getting harder. Okay. I just wanted to go for one point, which I forgot your name. Simone. But we can move on. But because you told me that I have privileges in my life, and to this point I'm not finished my film school yet. I never experienced any privileges in my film school as a male student. And I think maybe somebody will laugh, because then somebody will tell me, okay, then I'm this white male guy who don't see it. But if you ask our female students, they will tell you that there's no privileges for any genders on the film academy. But I agree with you, it will come up later. It will definitely come up in the industry, but not to this point.
But the thing is with privileges is that you don't see them, you know? That's the thing of privilege. The person who doesn't have the privilege, you see it. It's like a room, you know? When you cannot walk into the room, the person from outside sees the barrier. But when you're inside the room and you're always in the center, of course you don't see them, you know? I have privileges too, you know? Like everybody has privileges, and we need to check in our privileges and see like what privileges do we have, you know? I have a class privilege. I have the privilege to having been studied, and that my family is like I come from an academic background, you know. That's privilege.
That's true. But I was talking about this privilege which have man or woman in this kind of studies. I was not talking about privileges in society or in social
but saying
things.
that you don't have privileges as a man, I mean, this is.
You sometimes might not have noticed, but trust me, as a woman, if you talk to a technician, for example, just do you have the authority to tell an older white man who's been doing the lights for all this time? Imagine a young girl standing there trying to convince him she's right. It's a different reaction.
I give you an example. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I give you an example. Even though I'm a non-binary queer person, I work with a female director. So one example. We both send pictures. My picture is mentioned as a director, her not, you know? So we're like, fuck, okay, is this a coincidence? And then like we need to say, no, we are two directors. Put her picture on. Then like a second festival, like her name is not mentioned. Because they think I'm only the director and she not. Like third festival, we have like a meeting with a big producer and distributor, and then he's constantly saying to me, "So your assistant?" And I'm like, "No, I wrote you in the email. She's not my assistant. She's the director of the film. Like we are two directors." And then he's like, "So your assistant? So your assistant?" And 3 times he was saying "so assistant." I said, "Here, look at the flyer." And he was looking at it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm like too old for this." You know, so I can give you like 20 examples where, you know, and in this moment I need to check in my privileges I as well have as a male presenting person in the society, step in and say like, hello, you know, here you're being extremely sexist and you're constantly invisibilizing my co-director and like my colleague, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally see the point. Maybe I got this wrong example because I just wanted to go into this point because I'm only talking about the studies, but maybe it's the wrong topic because you don't know our school in this kind of. All your examples is like really from into the industry, and really from people who are really older. But I was just really talking about this film school. And
do you want to say patriarchy doesn't exist in Ludwigsburg?
No, I.
Are you fucking kidding me? Sorry, but it's
it exists on the level of the teachers, that's for sure. But it's not like that. They don't have the force to get the money to every student, and they say, okay, I like you more, you got more money, so everybody has the same chances in this kind of way. And this was the only thing I wanted to say, because in this kind of studies, we are somehow the same in this moment. I actually agree that it's not the same when you're talking like technician or when you send it to festivals. There are these patriarchy and these old patterns which we will.
But they exist everywhere, you know. They exist everywhere. It's like when you say racism doesn't exist, you know. It's like it is not. That's not true, you know. Like we really need to see in every space where like how does it manifest, and it's very various. And saying a space is free of that is like just it's perhaps and sometimes an utopic goal of achieving a society where these differences don't matter. That's our goal. But to go there, we need to go there, you know. And sometimes the school says, "Oh, sexism doesn't exist." This is extremely sexist, you know. Saying like racism doesn't exist, it's extremely racist, because then you are like invisibilizing people who have the experience of facing sexism every fucking day, you know. And I know people in Ludwigsburg, queer people, and they were like, I have a lot of examples of that, you know.
But maybe it is a good thing that there are now courses, or your course apparently, or your year, where it's been a subject where people are talking. I think probably the most efficient way to sum it up is that we are all share our stories, that we share our experiences, and that we kind of learn to leave all the borders behind, to cross the borders. Might it be forced that the border crosses us, or that we cross them by purpose? But I think, I think we should be able, and film festivals, to create a space which is safe for everyone and tells our stories. Okay, there is one comment, and I think then we have to leave the room. But if you the comment was, how can we do it better in the future?
But this is what we are doing. Like, look at our films, you know. Yeah, but I don't want to be in the position of being the person who creates bad energy, you know. Like sorry, you know, the system is fucked up and creates borders for people. And so we need to abolish these borders. And so we need to talk about them. We need to talk about the experiences of people, you know, who are at the margins, so that we can abolish them. So there's no other way, you know.
Maybe everybody can also reflect a bit about the privileges they've had or they've not had in their life, which is quite a valuable lesson as well. So in that sense, because we have to leave this room and our time is running out, it's a subject we can, I think, probably all talk more about, maybe upstairs in the foyer. But first of all, thank you to Erica, Steve and Simone for being here, for sharing their experiences, sharing their stories. and for all of you to listen. And thanks to the Filmfest Dresden, and be short now.